When the pandemic first hit in 2020, there were a few key trusted figures that Houstonians specifically turned to for guidance on how to navigate what was then an unknown new health threat with no clear treatments and which seemed to be killing some, sickening others, and was prompting dramatic responses. Among them, Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean of the School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. But as he made more public appearances and as the pandemic dragged on and large portions of society bristled against masking and vaccine mandates, Dr. Hotez became vilified. He was doxxed and attacked by Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and other high-profile figures, and people started harassing him even at his home. Dr. Hotez has a new book out. It's co-written with climate scientist Michael Mann, and it's called Science Under Siege. The pair argue science today faces coordinated attacks by powerful forces that undermine it. Dr. Hotez, welcome back to Houston Matters.
Oh, thanks, Craig. It's great to see you.
And as we chat, we welcome you to our conversation as well. With any questions or comments, you can email us at talk@houstonmatters.org. You can call us at 713-440-8870. You can also post a question or comment on our show post, or show rather, page on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. So hope you'll do that. Let's note up front that what you personally experienced during the pandemic wasn't necessarily new. I mean, you had long been at odds with a growing and vocal anti-vaxxer movement long before the pandemic. But how did that movement evolve over the last 5 years?
Yeah, well, it actually started. I'm a vaccine scientist. We develop vaccines at Baylor College of Medicine, Texas Children's Hospital, and the amazing Texas Medical Center, parasitic disease vaccines. And then we made a low-cost COVID vaccine that reached 100 million people. And that's what I always wanted to do with my life, make vaccines for the world, use my science to make vaccines. I did my MD and PhD in New York, and that was the plan, and have largely done that. The unplanned part was having 4 adult kids, including Rachel, who has autism and intellectual disabilities. And if you remember, the original assertion against vaccines were false claims that vaccines cause autism. And it was a number of years ago that actually I'll never forget it. I was in my office, and my assistant says, "Hey, Dr. Hotez," she's reading her note, "I have these 2 gentlemen on the phone. One is named Dr. Anthony Fauci, and the other one's named Dr. Francis Collins. Can you speak with them?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." And they said, "Peter, we got a job for you. We're concerned about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s remarks." This was a long time ago, even before, well before he became Health and Human Services Secretary. And if anyone can explain why vaccines don't cause autism, it's you, because because of Rachel, and you're a vaccine scientist. So I had a year of discussions with him that didn't go anywhere because he was deeply dug in and didn't really care about the science at all. And it was from that I wrote a book based on my year of conversations with him, with the straightforward title, "Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism." And that wound up, although it made me public enemy number 1 or 2 with anti-vaccine groups, it also gave me a front row seat to watch how this thing grew into the monster that it is today. It started moving even past autism, although that thread certainly still exists, and moving into a political front. You started getting anti-vaccine groups getting PAC money, Political Action Committee money, under this kind of phony baloney banner of health freedom, medical freedom, and filing anti-vaccine legislation at various state legislatures. And then the third converging piece of this was not only the political ramifications, but also there were financial underpinnings. The health wellness influencer industry converged with it, and there they were about whatever you can buy in bulk, and then jack up the price and repackage it and pair it with telehealth visits. I mean, have you ever wondered why they're all anti-parasitic drugs, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole? It's because they're cheap and they're available in huge amounts, so you could repackage it and bill customers thousands of dollars with telehealth visits. And unfortunately, their business model involves not only pushing the snake oil, but also denigrating science and the scientist. And for their business model, they felt the need to attack me and portray me as a cartoon villain or public enemy. So you had these 3 threads all coming together at once. The phony baloney about vaccines causing autism. Then you had the political libertarian piece around health freedom, medical freedom, and then the wellness influencer industry.
You co-authored this book with a climate scientist, and you see parallels between what you've observed within the discussion, debate, policy, and so forth surrounding vaccines and what we've seen surrounding climate science.
That's right. So Michael Mann is a prominent climate scientist. He's a professor at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and he's famous for creating what's called the hockey stick curve. I know we don't know a lot about hockey sticks here in Houston, but it just bear with me. Yeah, if you
I know
maybe if a hockey team comes, we'll know more again. But if you think of the hockey stick on the ground at the point of the blade facing upwards, those are the steep rise in temperatures over the last 200 years since the start of the Industrial Revolution. He was really attacked a lot by the fossil fuel industry and experienced similar kinds of things that I'm facing. So when he saw me, I think the way we got linked was, back a couple of years ago when there was this big pile-on with Joe Rogan, and you mentioned it, and Elon Musk, and for me to debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the Joe Rogan show. And, I thought, this is not how you do science. There was that big pile-on, and I was thinking, what the heck is going on here? And Michael either reached out to me or I reached out to Michael and said, hey, been there, done that, because he had faced similar attacks. So we started comparing notes and realized that there was some overlap. So if you think of the attacks on biomedical science and vaccines versus the attacks on climate sciences as two different circles of the Venn diagram, they overlap a bit. Not completely, but there is overlap. And we said this should be a book to really explain that this is not just some random junk out there on the internet. It's organized, deliberate, it's politically motivated, it's financially motivated, and it's killing Americans. And that's the genesis of the book.
Is it formal and intentional disinformation, or is it just a bubble perpetuating itself in an increasingly social media-driven world where algorithms reinforce what people want to hear and not necessarily what's true?
Well, it's both, but remember, the algorithms are created with bad intent, right? Because it is designed to attack science and scientists. And in some cases, you could understand the financial motivations behind it. In my case, around the very corrupt wellness influencer industry pushing ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or you have Mr. Kennedy saying, well, you could either get the MMR vaccine or you can get this useless cocktail of supplements like vitamin A and budesonide. That all comes from the wellness industry. And in Michael's case, the climate science, the fossil fuel industry seeking to discredit global warming and saying it's a hoax and that sort of thing. That part makes sense. The tougher part to understand from my point of view is what's the political motivation here, since it's so self-defeating. But it's a form of authoritarian control to attack ultimately to attack the intelligentsia. And you say, well, is there precedent for that? And we actually found a very good example, which was Stalinist Russia in the 1930s. They attacked the science and the scientists for political gain. And from my field, they attacked the Mendelian geneticist Nikolai Vavilov, who was one of the premier geneticists of his day, who was protecting the Russian wheat crop, and threw him into the Gulag, where he ultimately perished from starvation in a Gulag prison hospital and exposure, in favor of a crackpot, a guy named Trofim Lysenko, who had these crazy ideas that you could soak wheat in snow for periods of time and toughen it up. And even though it wound up severely damaging the Russian wheat crop and causing famine and starvation, it was more important to have control for Stalin than it was staying true to the science and protecting his people. And we're starting to see that now with attacks on climate science, and we're seeing it really play out now, tragically, in our Department of Health and Human Services that's doing so many self-defeating things.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We're talking with Dr. Peter Hotez. He's the co-author of Science Under Siege. We welcome you to the conversation with questions or comments at talk@houstonmatters.org. Call 713-440-8870, or you can post a question or comment on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Let's take a call. We have Thomas on the line from Montgomery County. Thomas, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, I'm confused. What medical schools did Joe Rogan or RFK Jr. attend?
Yeah, no, right. I mean,
They should be experts.
yeah, no, absolutely. What is it that gives them this platform and to say such irresponsible things? I mean, I had been, for instance, with Joe Rogan, I'd been on his show a couple of times. It was fine. He said a few odd things, but generally it went well, I thought. And then all of a sudden, 2021, after the Delta wave, when vaccines became available, he started to say vaccines didn't work and were dangerous, and he started really pushing hard on the ivermectin. And I was actually emailing him and said, Joe, have me back on because what you're saying is dangerous. And the numbers are awful. Here in Texas, for instance, we lost 100,000 people to COVID, Craig. And of those 100,000 people, almost half were after vaccines became widely available. They did not need to die. So of the 100,000 deaths in Texas, 40 to 50,000 were needless deaths because people refused COVID vaccines. They were victims of this campaign of aggression from the health wellness influencer industry and the health freedom movement, and that's why we care. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, and because it's not just some academic or arcane discussion to get my voice heard. It's to save lives, and I realize now that as important as the vaccines we're making at Texas Children's Hospital and Baylor College of Medicine are, and they are, some estimates say that our COVID vaccines saved 300 to 500,000 lives during the pandemic in India and Indonesia. But that's not enough anymore because now we've got to defeat this anti-vaccine activism that killed 40 to 50,000 Texans during the pandemic. And then it's not stopping, right? We've got this terrible measles epidemic that just ended after 8 months. And 100 kids and adults were hospitalized needlessly because they weren't vaccinated. And 2 school-age kids died because their parents decided not to vaccinate them. And the way I say it is they themselves are victims of this disinformation campaign. So it's not those who are refusing vaccines so much as going after those who are promoting health disinformation for their personal and political gain.
Some skeptics of vaccines, or climate change for that matter, see public health experts and climate scientists as academic elites or too connected to industries that they benefit from, renewable energy companies to the pharmaceutical industry. From their perspective, those are the powerful forces that are seeking to undermine their freedoms. Do you see that from their perspective?
I do see it from their perspective, and then I can explain why. It's because the anti-vaccine, anti-climate change people have pushed that narrative. I mean, every day, on social media, especially what used to be called Twitter, now X, I get this whole list of, a lot of them are actually not even people. They're probably bots that say, I'm a shill for industry and I'm taking money from pharma companies, when of course the reality is the opposite. We don't take any money from pharma companies. We made a low-cost vaccine that figured out how to bypass big pharma companies with no patents, no strings attached. So it's the exact opposite. But their narrative depends on portraying scientists as public enemies or cartoon villains, and that's why this is happening. It's all part of the disinformation campaign.
Does the scientific community itself, from climate scientists to public health officials, have some blame for maybe too often dismissing skepticism of a conclusion by saying things like, the science is proven or the debate is over, and not really engaging? I mean, you said yourself you didn't see going on Joe Rogan to debate RFK Jr. as an appropriate forum for such debate. But while that may be the case, does that also mean there were some folks who might have listened to that and might have been persuaded?
And maybe, but I had had a year of conversations with him, so I knew what it meant to talk to him. He doesn't care about the science, and he's dishonest about the science. I mean, and he kind of makes it up as he goes along. So and he just brings up all these unrelated facts or factoids. So when you have a bad faith actor, that's where it really gets problematic. And then it also sends the wrong message to young scientists that this is how science is done, through public debate with people that have nefarious agendas. And that's not how, I can't think of a single example where science was advanced through that. I mean, we do have our mechanisms. And so I think debating with bad faith actors or having those kinds of discussions is not productive, because, the minute you start talking to them in that public forum, you've lost 90% of the battle, because you've given them equal weight to your decades of study and how you do it.
Does that mean you need somebody else to step in and do that?
Well, we're supposed to have science journalists, and we do, but the problem is they're increasingly unemployed and they're disappearing as well. And it doesn't mean that scientists should not be out there in the public domain. And I think that's important as well, but not to debate with crackpots. I think it's really important that people hear from scientists. I think I may have said this to you once, Craig. There's our colleagues at Research America, which is a policy group based in D.C., does these surveys every couple of years, and they always come out with the same numbers. They ask the American people, can you name a living scientist? That's the question. And it turns out almost every 2 years they do this survey. It's always to get the same answer. 75% of Americans cannot name a living scientist. And when they try to do so, they usually name Einstein or Jonas Salk, not realizing that they've moved on a bit. Or they'll get to Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse Tyson, who are terrific, but they're not working scientists in the sense that we are in our Texas Medical Center, struggling over major revisions of peer-reviewed papers and grant applications and scientific meetings. So we're basically invisible. And by the way, they asked the American people, can you name an institution where biomedical research is conducted? And the vast majority of Americans cannot. And almost nobody names an institution in the Texas Medical Center, even though it's the finest biomedicine, life sciences complex in the world. So we're almost invisible by design, and that's part of writing the book is we have to fix that so people understand that scientists are real people who, whatever they do, pick up their kids at school and struggle over paying taxes and like the rest of Americans, and see us as real people again, rather than the way the bad actors portray us as sort of shadowy figures in white coats plotting all sorts of nefarious things.
Much public health research is done at or associated with universities. That research typically is reliant on funding from federal government agencies, some of which has been dialed back this year or eliminated entirely. And there's increased scrutiny of academics that some see as injecting politics into their work. We just saw last week the kerfuffle over what a teacher was teaching in a Texas A&M University class. Are you concerned some of that blowback could fall on you?
Well, here's the concern that I have is that, this is what Health and Human Services is doing right now. They are trying to falsely claim that the research done at academic health centers, like at the Texas Medical Center, is corrupted, that it's all tied in with profit from the big pharma companies. And it's not. We have, extensive conflict of interest notifications and everything else. There are so many belts and suspenders to prevent that. But his reason for doing it is so he can use it to dehumanize scientists, to degrade in the public's eye what scientists are doing, which we're doing this for the good of humanity and to do good in the world. That's why I became a scientist. That's why most people I know who became scientists did that. And they're not stopping there. It's not just cutting off funding from the National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation. They're even trying to go after biomedical journals, which go through peer review. And what are they doing? They're creating these WordPress documents that are made to look like journals with editors who are also unqualified, and essentially creating a parallel universe. And they're doing it for the benefit of the health, wellness, and influencer industry, so they can continue to promote their snake oil. And that's, again, another reason for writing the book, is to say this is organized and deliberate, and the fact that scientists are losing public trust is not necessarily because we screwed up. I mean, we can always improve, and of course there's always mistakes, but overwhelmingly it's because bad actors are weaponizing this and again portraying us as doing something nefarious or as cartoon villains.
So what then would you like anyone who's contemplating this sense that there's so much information out there that is misinformation about science, what do you want them to do? What do you want the greater public right now to do to gain access to information that's accurate and reliable?
Well, it's easier said than done because the disinformation is so dominant right now on the internet. So, what I would say is be really careful of your sources of information, and recognize that there's a whole universe of podcasters, on social media, especially on X, of YouTube videos that has this in mind. And by the way, some of it's coming from Russia as well, because they see this as a wedge issue to divide the American people. So there's that foreign actor dimension to it as well. And the other piece that I'm worried about, Craig, is a potential demoralizing effect on our young scientists. Sometimes they look at me like, Moses in the desert. Why did you bring us here? And I say, look, it is dark right now. There will be significant cuts to government funding to science. I think we'll have to recognize that, and we will see this Maha pseudoscience agenda continue to play out. And I say, but don't hunker down. Lean in, but lean in productive ways. We're going to have to find alternative mechanisms to support the kind of science that we do, and it may mean moving more into the biotech space and learning that whole aspect, and of course private philanthropy. So the hard part now is trying to find ways to carve paths of light through the darkness, and not just tell everybody to go move to France or England or Canada or Singapore. And because the other piece to this is the inevitable brain drain that will follow in limiting that. And I say, look, we are a nation built on the strength and greatness of our research universities and institutions, and we shouldn't forget that. So, when the nasty email or the thing on X appears, says the Army of Patriots is coming to hunt me down, I say, wait a minute, guys, the scientists are the real patriots, right? It's the scientists and the research universities and institutions, including the ones here in Texas, like University of Texas and Texas A&M and Texas Tech and University of Houston and all the institutions of the Texas Medical Center that gave us, the Manhattan Project and victory in the Cold War and helped achieve victory over HIV/AIDS and cancer. And we're the patriots, not these guys who have other agendas.
Dr. Peter Hotez is Dean of the School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. He is also the co-author of Science Under Siege, co-written with Michael Mann. Dr. Hotez, thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. You always appreciate the voice.